Hello and welcome to Trailgating Cirque Series, Freetrail's first time activating around this awesome premier mountain running circuit that takes place across the American West in the summertime. Tomorrow is Cirque Series A-Basin and your boy is pinning a bib on tomorrow. Don't look now. I might just beat the tail off our guest here that we're going to meet in just a second. But a big thank you to On for supporting our coverage here today, the title sponsor of Cirque Series. We've got a star-studded group that's going to join us in today's show. This is the pre-race show. Obviously, race will take place tomorrow morning here in Summit County, Colorado, A-Basin, where I grew up learning how to ski when I was but a tyke. Here we are as trail runners taking on a monster of a course tomorrow. We're joined by Adrian Macdonald right now, an awesome athlete who I'm very excited to get to know better. We just ran for the first time, got to know each other a bit this morning, but we're going to go a little long form now. After him, we've got Patrick Kipngeno and Philemon Kiriago, who are taking the world by storm. Two great Kenyan on-trail athletes who are here for a massive U.S. racing tour. After Patrick and Philemon, we'll close with Julian Carr, the founder and race director of the Cirque Series, who will tell us all about what we can expect this weekend. Maybe we can convince Harmony to run with me tomorrow. We may have a last-minute bib, but either way, very excited to be here, very excited to experience the Cirque Series for the first time. Behind the cameras, a big thank you to our guy, Tony with the Sony, Tony Di Pasquale, and a big shout-out to our guy, Ryan Thrower, who's not with us because he's taking on the Transalpine run in Europe starting tomorrow morning. So big good luck from our team here to our guy, Mr. Ryan Thrower. Adrian Macdonald. Hey, buddy. It's good to meet you today.
Yeah, nice to finally meet you.
How are you feeling ahead of tomorrow's monster 9-mile race effort that we're going to be duking it out over?
I'm feeling pretty good. I raced Leadville 3 weeks ago, took a week off, and then did a big week of Vert and Chamonix.
Yeah, I want to hear about both of those things here in a bit, but I'm cognizant of the fact that this is your first time appearing on any of the Freetrail platforms. We just met each other today. Like I said, I learned that you grew up outside of Boston. You went to Gettysburg for school. Fill out some of those details for the audience, just sort of a little bit of who is Adrian Macdonald.
Yeah, so like you said, I grew up outside of Boston, went to Gettysburg College in Pennsylvania to run cross country and track. And I did some road running after college. And then it was the pandemic that sort of gave me the final push to get into ultra trail. In the summer of 2020, I had never run an ultra and decided that I wanted to run the Leadville 100 the next summer. Got my entry into the race and then won it.
No big deal.
Yeah.
Take us into that initial moment of inspiration. Like, what was that original insight that drew you to it? Because actually my story is very similar. I was 22 years old, fresh out of college, where I played lacrosse, looking for what was next in my life, learned about Leadville, and I was like, I'm doing that next year.
Yeah.
And then focused my entire life at it.
Yeah, I had a few small hints that I might be good at it. One was I did this, so I live in Fort Collins, Colorado now, and I decided while I was doing marathon training that it might help my marathons if I did a 30-mile training run. And so I ran from Old Town, Fort Collins to the top of Horsetooth Rock and back.
Yep.
And that was like 33 miles or so. And I did it without pretty much any water or nutrition. Bonked really hard, but still was able to run pretty well the whole time. Yeah. So that was a few years before I decided to do Leadville, but I had that in the back of my head that if I ever want to try that, I might be good at it.
So talk about your relationship with Leadville, the race. Like, why was it that race that you picked? Was it simply the fact that you lived in Colorado?
Yeah, I was pretty ignorant of the whole trail running scene. So I knew Leadville and Western states, and Leadville was close to home and more attainable. So that was it.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
So you have only had a short history of the sport, but you've been incredibly successful, especially at Leadville. Just maybe quickly encapsulate your 3 years running the race and, what's kept you coming back.
Yeah, so the first year I won in 16 hours, 18 minutes. That was the year where Anton sort of made his comeback, which was kind of cool to be a part of and to sort of spoil it. And then the next year I came back and ran 16:05, which was the third fastest time at the time. That was 2 years ago. Last year I ran UTMB, and this year this was like my push for the course record. And I ended up finishing second. Everyone knows what happened.
Yeah.
But I ran under 16 hours, which I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
Because only 4 of us have done it now.
Yeah. So cool. And I want to hear more about it in a second, but maybe first meditating on that original year where you probably surprised yourself and a lot of other people.
Yeah, definitely.
Including myself. It's like, who's this Adrian Macdonald guy? Like 16, 18 on debut.
Yeah.
In what ways did that maybe change your relationship with the sport? Did it plant further seeds that this was something that you obviously were good at and you wanted to pursue?
Yeah, definitely. It was life-changing. I was just an amateur runner doing the sport because I loved it. And then I did that. And now I'm with On and I can travel the world and run. It's beyond my wildest dreams. So yeah, one of like the Leadville sayings is that it's going to change your life. And for me, it really did.
Yeah. So a couple of weeks ago, you were back, as you just stated, ran under 16 hours for second place, painfully. I'm sure obviously a lot of people would love to hear your perspective, finishing behind David Roche, but really pushing him the whole way and running a PR yourself. Though you finished second, you ran faster than you had on both of your victories. What was it like to be there on the course that day, chasing the record yourself, but ultimately kind of pushing somebody else to that mark?
Yeah, so, I mean, I was surprised by his performance, definitely. And I had to switch up my plan in the middle of the race because he was running so fast up front. So my game plan going into it was to run 7.5 hours to Winfield, which is the 50-mile turnaround. And he was there at 7:10, and so I ended up doing it in 7:20. And I was a little scared that I had gone too hard and I'd blow up, but I felt in the moment that I had to do that to race them. And it got really hard after getting through Twin Lakes, which is the 100K mark. On the way back, it was pretty hot, which I don't know if a lot of people were aware of how hot it got out there.
Yeah.
And I was like, leaving Twin Lakes, I was like stumbling and tripping a bunch of times. And that's the hardest I've ever run, those last 40 miles. It was really proud of how I was able to run so hard while I was feeling so crummy.
Really? So it was a struggle the whole final 60K? Say more about this miscalculation, because you mentioned it while we were running today too, the split to Winfield and how that impacted the second half of your race, because I think it's an interesting insight for the audience. Yeah,
so Matt Carpenter in his record ran the first half in 7:35. And so the course was slightly different then. So I was thinking to do that or a little bit faster would be the best way for me to get his record. And I still feel, had I done what I set out to do and run 7.5 hours, that even though the first half would have been 10 minutes slower, I could have run the second half 20 minutes faster and gotten the old record, but I still would have been second.
Yeah. It's an interesting, sort of post-mortem contemplation of maybe if you would have gone a little bit slower, you would have run a little bit faster. But it's interesting to also hear you say that likely you would have still gotten second place.
Yeah.
So, but something to go back for.
Yeah.
So in your 3 runnings, I think you said it was 16:18, 16:05, 15:56. What do you think
Yep.
has made you so consistent on that course?
Um,
And like there's incremental
Yeah.
improvement. Like
Yeah.
you probably still feel like there's room for you to improve there.
I just love running in Leadville, so I'm still motivated to go up there and train during the summer, and I love running up to Hope Pass. I'd say that's my favorite trail is the north side going up to Hope Pass.
Yeah.
And then just being at the top of Hope Pass, it's not a summit, obviously, but you feel like you're right in the middle of the mountains here in Colorado.
You said you aspire to get 10 finishes someday. So
Yeah,
only
I
7
need a
more to
bigger
go.
belt buckle.
Those things are incredibly
Yeah.
enticing, aren't they? The dinner plates.
Yeah.
So then you had a relatively hilarious double that involved you going to participate in a race with your former teammates at your alma mater. Tell the audience about that because it's
Oh, yeah.
funny.
My first run back after Leadville was my college's alumni 5K cross country race. And I ran 18:20 or so, but it was a big negative split. I think I ran 6:12, and then 5:33 for the last mile.
There you go.
Yeah.
You still have the leg speed after the
Yeah.
hundreds. And you're going into cross country season now. This is sort of like a running theme on the show where we talk about cross country occasionally. Talk
Yeah.
about how that stimulus has helped you in the longer stuff.
Yeah, so hopefully I can get a team from Fort Collins to go to Club Cross Country in Seattle in December. Yeah, a lot of my training is very similar to what road marathoners do. So I still have pretty good turnover. And I think I could, like if they told me to run a 10K on the day of Leadville instead of 100 miles, I probably could have PR'd in the 10K.
Well, isn't the Leadville 10K the weekend before?
Yeah,
100 mile
maybe
race?
I should have done it.
Should try that double next year. So you mentioned also that you went over to UTMB to do stuff with On,
Yep.
and you have finished the race there last year, though certainly well off your potential. One of the things we were discussing on our run today was kind of the bizarre attrition that occurred during the race this year. You've sort of been in those shoes, so to speak, before, but opted to kind of close the loop and gain that experience. I think the audience would love to hear you talk about that a little bit, the value of seeing it through.
Yeah, I think the most basic thing about ultra running is finishing the distance. Like it's cool, no matter how fast you do it, to run 100 plus miles around Mount Blanc or 100 miles in Leadville. So, and you get pride out of finishing it, even if it's much hours slower than you hope for. So, especially in my first attempt at UTMB, I thought it was important to finish it and sort of, yeah, like check off that box that, yeah, I ran around Mount Blanc, which is like a really cool thing to do.
You mentioned that you and your coach drew a lot of learnings out of that, and maybe there was some other learnings or some of those old learnings reinforced by this second trip over. Your coach, you said, is sort of a carryover from your road marathoning days, and you guys sort of figured out trail and ultra running together. I'm sure the audience would love to hear your post-mortem assessment of the 2023 UTMB, what you and your coach learned together from that episode.
Yeah, we didn't really change much training between what I had done at Leadville and UTMB. So it was lots of fast running and sort of moderate vert, not over 20,000 feet per week. Yeah, and so if I run UTMB again, I think I would maybe cut out some of those fast workouts and change them into big vert days.
Yeah. Good plan.
Yeah.
Speaking of big vert days, tomorrow, bro.
Yeah.
Here we go. Cirque Series A-Basin. We preview ran the course today. Where's your head at going into the final Cirque Series event of the year? How does this fit into your season? How are you feeling going in?
It doesn't really fit into my season, but I just love Cirque Series races. It's just a totally different vibe than most trail races in the U.S. And
say more about that, because that's one of the things that
Yeah.
we want to capture here with our shows is like what makes Cirque Series interesting. And this is our first time attending, so
yeah,
I personally don't know except for what I can glean from social media and from talking to other runners, but it does feel like it's a different and special racing experience.
yeah. There's just I feel like a lot of trail races, and I know you're a race director, but they just seem like they're sort of put on by old people that have been running trails for years and years, and it's great. And that's what we love about the sport, like the tradition of the courses and things like that. And then you come to Cirque Series, and it's a sort of more young, hip crowd. Yeah, and it's just sort of refreshing, and it is. You see people that you wouldn't see at other trail races doing it. So I know you've talked about, and I know I've listened to your podcast with Julian about how it's
Yeah.
sort of a gateway into trail running. And you can definitely see that.
Yeah. Awesome.
And then it's obviously really hard running up, but then it's so fun to finish
Yeah.
with like a screaming fast downhill.
Well, this is what I think is kind of interesting about you. And there's not a lot of runners in the sport who can cross over successfully and do these roughly 10-mile races, but then also compete to win at Leadville. Is there anything there about like how you approach your career in such a way to where you are able to develop and maintain that range?
Yeah, well, like I said, I do a lot of speed training, so that helps me with something like Cirque Series. And I like to race, but I don't like to race ultras too much. So doing races like this in a build up to an ultra, I think it's beneficial because it gives you practice at running really hard at high altitude, which is really beneficial for Leadville and even something like UTMB. And it's just fun and a way to race without beating my body up too much.
What have you learned about executing a 100-mile race? Because like outside of that UTMB example, you've been super consistent. I mean, you won the Tarawera 100-miler this year. You win the Kosciuszko 100-miler in Australia also. Your 3 races at Leadville, especially like being a relatively inexperienced runner at this top level. What do you think has allowed you to like figure the distance out more or less?
So I think it's one of the patience. I just try and probably I'm like a relatively patient guy in general. So just
What's that
being
like,
able
man?
to,
I'm
yeah.
the absolute opposite.
Yeah, and I think that's like the one thing when someone asks for advice about ultra running, I just say patience. Like you need to be patient, and you can't pay attention to people that are sprinting off the start line. And just sort of my relatively calm demeanor is sort of a part of that.
So maybe Leadville was an example where you went against your patient disposition, and you still ran under 16
Yeah.
hours, but
Yeah, so I lost a little. Yeah, Leadville, I've always tried to think, don't get excited until you go back through Twin Lakes
Yep.
second time. And maybe I overdid it a little bit on the first half, but I don't regret it. I needed to try and win.
yeah. So tomorrow, again, this I would say is arguably one of the most competitive Cirque Series races ever.
Yeah.
We got Patrick and Philemon here just outside the studio. They're going to join us in a second. Joe Gray's on the start list, the North America's best mountain runner over the last 15 years. Cam Smith is a stud. Mika Boudon-Rousseau, sort of this next-gen hyper talent. How are you thinking about the race tomorrow, your position within it, confidence level, strategy, things like that?
Yeah, so I'm not going to try and race any of them. Yeah, so I obviously Leadville was just 3 weeks ago, and so we'll see how I feel. I do feel pretty good, so I'll give it an honest effort. But even at my best, I'm not going to beat those guys at this type of race. And I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah.
There's a one out and back section, so hopefully I can see.
That would be a good goal. Just be on the out and back when those guys are on the way down.
Yeah.
That would be a victory in itself. Lord knows I will not accomplish that, but very cool. I'm sure the audience would love to hear. I mean, one of the things that's interesting about Cirque races, and I'm going to talk to Julian about this too, is I think he's done such a good job of attracting professionals to come run the races. There is prize money on the line, but I think people like you oftentimes are like viewing this as a great opportunity to develop racing skills, build fitness, almost like a substitute for a workout that's sort of like a springboard towards other stuff. So maybe with that as a prompt, you could tell us about how this does fit in with your personal training and your future goals.
Yeah, like I was saying before, it's like really helpful to learn to push hard at high altitude. I think there's some benefits for beating up your legs with a hard, fast downhill, which I don't really do in training. So it's races like this where it's a couple of times a year when I do something like that.
You said tomorrow you're going to get your sub 5 mile of the year.
Yeah, I don't know if I've clocked one yet, so tomorrow might be it.
Watch out on the downhill. So, but then looking further ahead, obviously the season still has room in it. There's still the final quarter of the racing season. Where might people see you this year and in the future? Like what are some of your goals?
I haven't, nothing concrete yet, but I might try and get a golden ticket early in the new year. So either go back to Tarawera or Black Canyon. And then club cross country in December, hopefully.
I mean, it's kind of brilliant though. Like you do the Cirque race.
Yeah.
We're knocking rust off after Leadville, get the legs moving fast again, then go into cross country season, and then an early season fast 100K, whether it's Black Canyon or Tarawera. You can see how those pieces fit together in a way that might set you up for Western States next year.
And running fast is part of it. It helps you run slow, faster.
Yeah. Well, Adrian, it's great to meet you today. It was awesome to share some miles together. I was obviously teasing earlier. We definitely won't be doing battle personally tomorrow, but I'll be cheering for you, and I'll be looking forward to hearing the war stories when we're hanging around in the vendor village after the fact. So thanks for coming on, and good luck tomorrow.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back with Patrick Kipngeno and Philemon Kiriago. Don't go anywhere. Okay, we are back, joined by Patrick Kipngeno and Philemon Kiriago, the great Kenyan champions, back here in the United States. And I'm so excited to chat with you both. Like I said before we got started, we are big fans of yours here in studio. There's a lot of American fans of both of yours, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you both a little bit more better here. But maybe first, just tell us how it feels to be back in the United States, your second trip over this season, and what your feelings are like, or what your first impressions are here in Colorado. You can start with you, Patrick.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I'm really happy to be back to America again. And I'm ready to race tomorrow. And I hope everything will be all right. Yeah.
Philemon?
Also, on my side, I would take this opportunity to be here again, my second time in this season. So I'm so excited to be invited to tomorrow competition. I will do my best.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I would love to hear first and foremost, obviously, everybody who are fans of running in general know that Kenya is a place that produces immense talent in track and field, in road racing, in the marathon, in cross country. And you two, along with a few other Kenyan athletes, are really starting to make a mark in trail running. So maybe for both of you, if you could just explain the original inspiration to pursue trail and mountain running rather than pursuing the road marathon or the track, things like that. Maybe Philemon, you can get us started with this one.
Yeah, as the beginners of Kenyans in mountain running and trail running, we try to encourage more Kenyans that also trail running and mountain running is a sport which people can learn and they can enjoy to see top of the mountain in shortest time when you are learning. So as Learn Together, they has also started to put some races in Kenya. I think in November 16th, we have one trail running in Kenya. We invite you.
There's a race in Kenya in November. Awesome.
We invite you.
Go.
Yeah, we invite you. So we want to make Kenyans to know that trail running also is a very good race. Each and everyone can race.
Great.
Yeah.
Patrick, I'd love to hear the same question for you. Like, what drew you to the sport of trail and mountain running?
First of all, I want to say that before I started running a mountain and trail running, before I was running road races and cross countries, and in the year 2001, I joined Run Together. That is where I started competing in mountain running. Yeah. And in Kenya, most of the athletes they don't run mountain running, and for me, I say that I have to be an example to those for the Kenyans to know that even trail running and mountain running is a good event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've both just mentioned Team Run Together. It's on your jacket there. I'm sure this is something that a lot of people have seen on social media, on your racing kits, but at least personally, I don't know a lot about your training group. So I'd love you both to say a few words about the group, the support system that exists within it, and how you guys all sort of help each other be successful in the sport. Maybe Patrick, we can start with you.
For us, we normally run as a team, and that's why I say that before. In Kenya, we have a few races in Kenya for mountain running, and we were trying to push to show that to show the country that even though we are few, but there is something we can show the world that we can make it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, but is it true that you spend most of the year training in Europe and racing in Europe? And if so, what's the team environment like? Because I've heard you're based a lot of the year in Austria. Is that right, Philemon? Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, of course. In summer season, we are in Austria for races, but we have Run Together camp in Kenya, which has more than 55 runners. We have road racers, track, and some they have started to come from mountain. If you are watching it for the last 2 weeks, you were seeing they were performing very good. Also this week we have more than 8. They are competing in the mountain before they leave to Kenya. So we have a strong team which is training in Kenya. So in the coming days, you will see them in trail because they have seen Patrick and Philemon and others. They are improving day and day in trail learning. So they have that ability that they want to learn like us. Mm-hmm. So they are training a lot for mountain. So as soon as possible, you will see.
Okay, so the training group exists in Kenya, and then you and a group of support system and training partners spend the summer season mostly in Austria and racing in Europe with the occasional trip over to the United States. Is that accurate?
Yes, in Kenya we train, but in summertime when the lessons started, we start coming.
Come over. Yeah.
Yeah, we have some trials. We make trials in Kenya. We take the best that they are ready for compete.
Yeah.
And the others, they continue training for preparation for the coming competitions.
Okay.
Or they do some competitions in Kenya to engage themselves that they are becoming in a good shape.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for explaining it to me. I'm sorry. I'm just personally curious about your training group and the support system, because it does feel like you are a team, right? And that you guys help each other be so successful in the sport. And speaking of which, I'd love to talk about both of your seasons briefly. Patrick, we can start with you. You've had an amazing season so far. You won both the early races in the Golden Trail World Series in Asia, both in Japan and in China. You came over to the Broken Arrow Sky Race where you won both the vertical kilometer, you won the 23K, you finished third at Sierras and All earlier in August. It's been a spectacular season so far for you. Maybe just say a few words about your season so far and the goals that you still have set for yourself here in the next couple of weeks and beyond.
For me, I can say that the season for me this year was good, and it is not like last year. Last year was suffering for many injuries, and this year I feel like I'm somewhat free from injury. Yeah, and I'm looking forward for the coming races, and I will push until I see that I finish in the top.
Yeah. You raced the Cirque Series Brighton event in June. So the Cirque Series, the race series that we're at this weekend, you did a race in Utah, I think just a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Do you want to say anything about that? Like the experience doing the Cirque Series event specifically, and now being here to do your second one this weekend?
Yeah, for me, I cannot say anything about the tomorrow race because I don't know the exact the course, and
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, we'll move on. But Philemon, I'd love to hear from you about Sierras and All in particular. That was such an incredible race. You and the great Julian Carr engaged in battle all the way to the finish line. I'm sure the audience would love to just hear the race from your perspective, especially, when I watched the broadcast, Julian sort of got a gap on the climb uphill, and then you sort of caught up to him on the flatter rolling trails. So the dynamic between you and Julian, and just how the race played out from your perspective.
For me, Sierras and All, according to me, I do like it so much. You see, from the beginning, I was in front. Before the end of the mark load,
Yeah.
Julian was pushing a lot uphill. Julian, yes, does several times. Now I try to call my colleagues. Julian is going. I say that don't follow a big machine. Come with your pace. I heard from my friends. So I said I want to maintain some energy, because at the moment I have a good speed on the flat path. After uphill, I will try to learn under 300 per kilometer, so that I would see that if I will learn top 3, because I was from injury. I got in Japan due to testing my ankle. Now I was testing my body if it was active. I saw that still I'm on. Looking forward to try the remaining races to defend my last title. Yeah.
So for our audience, you were only 2 seconds behind Julian, who broke his own course record at Sierras and All. You finished in second place, and Patrick, you finished in third. Anything you want to add about Sierras and All? I mean, it's an incredible podium. Julian Carr, Philemon Kiriago, Patrick Kipngeno, and obviously it's an iconic race in Europe. Certainly, one of the most famous races in the world. I'd love to hear your perspective too.
For me, Sierras and All, I like running in Sierras and All. Sierras and All is a very tough course, And for me, I can say it's a very long distance for me.
Yeah.
For me, I normally run not over 21,
Yeah.
but I've been running top 3. The first race I was position 2. The second one, 2023, I was position 2 last year.
Yeah.
This year I was position 3.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I hope next year we will try with my colleague to see what will happen with the course record in Sierra Leone.
Okay, cool.
I know. Yeah.
It's funny because we were just at UTMB last week and I did an interview with Remy Bonnet.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I asked him when I watched the broadcast, it seemed like Kilian got a gap quickly on the climb. And I remember when we were talking at Broken Arrow, you said, I'm the 2-time vertical world champion. I have a lot of confidence there. Obviously, Remy is also very good at the vertical. So from a racing dynamic perspective, were you being conservative because it was a longer event, or was Kilian just too strong on the climb that day?
The race was too long for me.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
why I decided to use my own pace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, it was very entertaining, and congratulations on the amazing performances. So we've talked about your training group. We've talked about, in general, the interest from Kenyan athletes about trail and mountain running and the role that you guys play within that. I'm sure the audience would love to hear any details that you can share about how you two have specifically inspired fellow Kenyan athletes to experiment with trail running. Like, what sort of conversations or coaching or resources have you tried to help connect to your fellow Kenyan athlete colleagues to get them inspired about our sport?
Yes, of course, we have done it. Like at the moment, for sure, if you were looking from the beginning of Serezenar, there is a guy who was challenging Kilian before I left to Kilian. He's part of us. He's from Run Together.
Right.
But unfortunately, he didn't have the visa of America to come to race for some races in America. We usually train as a team. And when we are training, jokes aside, we train that to come to see top of the mountain with high speed.
Yeah.
So, of course, I think at the beginning of next year, we want to see on the trail running, maybe it will sign on top.
Yeah.
Because we trust the guys we have.
This year, for the first time, there was a Kenyan athlete in the OCC race at UTMB just last week, which was also a very exciting new development. Philemon just mentioned your guys' training. I'm sure the audience would love to hear more details, whatever you can share about your coach, the system under which you train, some of like your key sessions or overall training philosophy. Is there anything you can share about the way you go about your training?
For us, when we are in Kenya, we are training together with the road racers because in Kenya we don't have a big mountain like here, like in America or in Europe. Or our area is somehow flat.
Yeah.
So for us, we don't have a specific program to say that this one is for mountain or this one is for road racers. It's only that sometimes for the mountain athletes or trail running athletes, we normally go for we normally do hill walk.
Yep.
Yeah, just climbing for around 400 meters, going over 300 meters, repeating. Yeah.
And then when you go and do training camp in Europe, is that when you do more specific mountain training?
But when we are doing our program with the road racers, we just only adjust our program for the mountain running.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you travel to Europe,
Yeah.
does that change? Do you implement different training philosophies, different training programs and protocols when you actually have the availability of mountains, which you said you don't have in Kenya?
When we are in Austria, we normally change our program. Now, when we are in Europe, we are now doing running in the mountains. Yeah.
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 Maybe, Philemon, I'd love to hear the relationship between the two of you also, because I think I heard you say, Patrick, in an interview that you were a little bit stronger than Philemon in climbing, but Philemon was a little bit faster than you on flats. And obviously you've both had amazing careers, and you've both probably have the ability to make each other better, to help each other improve and to push each other in different ways. Philemon, can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. For me, when I started running, I found Patrick, he was running.
Yeah.
Now I can say that Patrick is a role model to me. I do respect him and I do follow his program and his knowledge that is expressing to us. Sometimes he can make a program, maybe he says, the beginning of the year, we do it road races. When we are coming to near to the competitions, we switch to mountain preparation. Maybe you find yourself already, you have mileage, you have speed, what you lack is only a stamina for the mountain. Now I said, on the top of the program of road races, we should have some mountain program. Maybe we do 1 hour up and down. Yeah, that's why I do say that is someone who has a clean heart to other fellows.
Cool.
For sure.
Patrick, anything you want to say about how Philemon has specifically helped you to become a better athlete? Is it true what I said, that maybe you're a little bit stronger in the vertical, for example, but Philemon's maybe a little bit faster on the flats? Like, where are your strengths and weaknesses relative to one another?
Yeah, for sure, Philemon is a great friend of me, and we normally assist each other. For me, I'm good in uphill, and for Philemon, is good in downhill. So when we are doing training together, I normally push him towards uphill, and he normally push me downhill. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
So the race tomorrow is the first of 3 weekends of racing in a row. You said already, Patrick, that you don't know anything about Cirque Series A-Basin, but it'll be roughly, about 15-kilometer race.
Yeah.
And, some technical terrain, but fairly runnable. And that is the first event of 3 races in a row that you're going to be taking part in here in North America. Cirque Series again tomorrow, the Golden Trail World Series race, Headlands 27K in our neighborhood in California next weekend, and 2 weeks from now at Mammoth Trail Fest. I'd love to hear you both talk about the strategy for racing 3 times in 3 weekends and how you ensure that you can be in top form for all 3. Because for me, it feels like that's a lot of racing to do in 3 weeks. Patrick, we can start with you.
For me, I'm the first thing I normally do is that I have to set my mind. I say that I have to do it and focus. And before everything, first of all, we normally do our training to make sure that we are in good shape. Yeah.
Philemon, anything you want to add there? Because, I think what people would like to hear is what you do in between the races. Obviously, you're going to have to travel also, so how you make sure you're recovered from each event to make sure you can perform at your best in the next race, 3 weekends in a row.
Yeah. According to us, the program we usually use in the training, it will favor us because we usually roughly we cover 30 kilometers per day. If we race for one competition less than 30 kilometers a weekend, it cannot affect us because we usually cover 180 to 200 per week.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you say that racing every weekend is like doing a long run every weekend. What you need to switch your plane or to have what you call adjustable plane.
Yeah.
You say that now it's a long run but with high speed. And I want to try my best to show that I perform good. So if you switch your mind like that, you forget what you rested the last weekend. It will make you to perform good, and you cannot feel that you are tired from the last competition. Yeah, because after the racing, you start recovering these 5 days. You reduce your training from that 30K maybe to 20 per day or 15 per day. That's part of recovering for waiting for the race on a weekend, like a long run. Now you say it's a long run, like at Tembo, you want to push up to your maximum level. Yes, of course.
So cool. So another thing I would love to have you both talk about is right now trail running is in such an interesting spot where there's so many different opportunities. Of course, you focus mostly on the short distance, vertical races, mountain races, maybe up to 30 kilometers like Sierras and all. But then on the other end of the spectrum, we have like 100-mile events, 100-kilometer events, 50-kilometer events. And so as you think about your careers, both in the short term and long term, there's so many different options of what you could do. So I'd love to just have you both say anything you'd like about how you visualize your career. Do you expect to continue to race in short distance events, or at some point might you try and extend and compete in some of the longer races? Patrick, we can start with you.
For me, I can say that before I was running mountain running, and I was running vertical, only vertical. But this means that I was running less than 5 kilometers.
30 minutes.
Yeah, 30 minutes. And then reaching somewhere, I say that I have to shift to long distance, like 21 kilometers, up and down. And I tried and I make it. Now, last year, I started running Golden Trail, and I finished in top 2.
Yep.
And this year again, I'm trying to be in the top 3, and then hopefully next year, I will adjust to run the 42 kilometers, and I hope I will just moving up and up every year.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Philemon, same question to you. Where do you visualize your career in the next few years?
For me, I do say that learning is like when you wake up, you make one step from the bed. If you move one step is a learn. According to me, I was starting with small races, 2022. 2023, I tried to run World Cup and some Golden Trail Series. I see that I'm improving. As time goes by, I want to say that I would try next year to learn on races, sky races, and the Golden Trail, because before I cannot jump learning this. I say that I want to learn marathon. Before running a marathon, I want to make sure that I learn on races. I have yet the over on the podium, coming to Golden, also the podium. If I manage that, now I will say that I qualified to try longer distances like a marathon, like 50K. But I cannot learn more than 50K because it's the beginning.
Yep.
50K it will be my longest. As coming in 3 to 4 years, then I switch to 100 kilometers. Yeah.
It's very, very exciting. I appreciate you guys both for coming over and spending some time chatting with me. Maybe in closing, we can just tell us what your goals are for tomorrow at Cirque Series A-Basin. Philemon, we could start with you.
For me, tomorrow is another day. I'm expecting good results because when I'm here, I'm ready prepared, and I will try to determine myself, even if the altitude is high, because I know that each and every my career is suffering as I suffer. What will determine to run good is only mentality. If I have strong mentality, I will learn good. So I will try my best tomorrow to show my good results.
I love it. Patrick, final word to you. What are your goals for tomorrow?
For tomorrow, I can say that tomorrow field will be very strong athletes, and I know everybody is prepared, and I can say only that the best athlete will win. Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, it's an honor to meet you both and to be able to chat with you both. We're longtime fans of yours, and this is a great opportunity for us to finally sit down and chat together. We'll be anxious to see how you both perform tomorrow, and maybe we can convince you both to come in for a post-race interview too. But either way, I won't be at the race in the Bay Area, which is unfortunately where we live. We have conflict that weekend, but we will also see each other at the Mammoth Trail Fest in a couple of weeks. And again, just a big fan, and I'm grateful you would spend some time with us. So thanks for coming into the studio.
Thank you so much.
We'll be right back with the Cirque Series founder and race director, Mr. Julian Carr. Don't go anywhere. We are back. Julian Carr, the founder, race director of the Cirque Series. First time meeting in person. As I've told you, I'm a massive admirer of you and what you've built. Good to finally meet each other.
Yeah, man. Likewise. Big fan of what you got going on too. So this is great.
How are you feeling as race director the eve before the final Cirque Series event of 2024?
So good. I feel like I punch in back in June, and I don't actually punch out until the race is over tomorrow.
Yeah.
So my body can kind of feel that the season is the last race. So it's cool.
The nervous system finally releases.
Yes.
Maybe we can all experience that after the race tomorrow.
Yeah.
Enjoy some good vibes at the finish line. We'll
Yeah.
talk about that in a second. But like I said, big admirer of the Cirque Series. My first time experiencing it myself. So all my admiration comes strictly from digital observation. So, and we've done a whole podcast about this so people can go back and listen to, but maybe you could just provide the quick 60, 90 second evolution of where the Cirque Series started, where it is now in 2024.
For sure. I have a skiing background, and I'm used to, boot packing or skinning up 2,000 or 4,000 vert and skiing a cool line, and so I kind of got into hiking peaks in the summer for just kind of training, and I got really into it. I lived in Salt Lake, and I lived right by the trailhead to Mount Olympus, and that's like a 5-mile round trip, 4,000 vert. And man, I got in good shape, and I got really addicted to the clock. So I was always trying to beat my best time, and it was just a dynamic, fun adventure. And I tried to invite my friends, and I'm like, we don't really run. I'm like, it's not really running, it's like torture hiking. And then your agility on the way down takes everything you got. And I was doing it so much. I got so into it. And at the time I thought I might've been fast. And this was like 11, 12 years ago. Yeah. And I looked up, mountain running races. I didn't know anything. I saw the ultras, I saw, speed goats and all the color runs and Spartans and relay races and marathons and all that stuff. I was like, that's cool and all, but where is a 6, 7, 8 mile race to the top of a cool mountain that's like 3,000 or 4,000 vert, and you come back down and have a big party at the bottom? I'm like, why doesn't that exist? That's so weird. And I was just shocked. And in the back of my head, I was like, I guess I'll have to start my own race series. And that was an idea in the back of my head for, about 2 or 3 years. And then I was on a ski trip in Iceland, and it was March of 2015. And same thing, I'd, hiked up this really cool line with 8 of my buddies to do a little film project. And I was up there first, watching the sunset on the Arctic Ocean. I just felt so good, so accomplished. It's just that feeling of getting to a high point with friends. It just feels so good, and I was up there just feeling great, and I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to start this race series. So that summer, fast forward to August, we had our first 4 races at Snowbird, Deer Valley, Alta, and Crested Butte.
So that was 2017?
2015.
2015?
Yeah.
So this is our
ninth
number
season.
9?
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
So expand on that, because, and I think we talked about this in the podcast that we did, but it does strike me as an obvious insight. Like you just said, why doesn't this exist? But also was fundamentally at odds with the trends in the sport, and maybe it was an advantage for you not being endemic to like core trail and ultra running, because at that time, especially in the US, the sport was almost uniformly focused on ultra distance events. And so you're doing these, whatever, 6 to 9 mile mountain races that are just pure, clean, up, down loops for the most part. So you can see the aesthetic, but you also were zigging when other people were zagging. And now here we are 9 years later, and you've built, you know, this amazing mountain running series. Have you meditated at all on that? Because obviously, like, being differentiated from the other things that exist in the marketplace is important for you. And it seems like that founding insight was sort of the kernel of this genius idea, you know?
One of my favorite quotes is usually the best ideas are the most obvious.
Yeah.
And that was just totally this. And, you know, when I really started going for it that first year, I had quite a few kind of veteran trail runner types that had done a lot of races say, hey, this isn't going to work, just so you know. Like, people kind of place the value of the races they're doing based on the distance.
Yeah.
It's just too short. It's not going to work. And I was like, well, you know, I absolutely take your opinion into consideration, but watch what we're doing. Like, we're doing something a little different. And so I think it was good that I didn't quite know the landscape. Like, I went to a real small production trail run race in Moab, and like 300 people were in it. It cost like $150. You know, I got a t-shirt, and I got second. And this was back when I thought I was fast. And that's one of the reasons why I thought like I could actually compete, because I got second in this really small race in Moab 12 years ago. But I was looking around, there's always young, interesting people. Yeah. And there was no production value in this race. It was a beautiful course. But when we came across the finish line, we were like the only car that backed up, popped the trunk, had like, you know, cooler full of beverages, and we're like cheering people through the finish line. Everyone's finishing. There's just no scene. And I was like, man, these people are dying to have a good time. Like, you know, note to self. And then I went to the GoPro Mountain Games, opposite. Production value was huge, through the roof, because I was an athlete for GoPro at the time. And they were like, hey, if you want to come hang out, do any of the events, great. And I was like, cool, I'll do the 15K mountain run. And so the production value's through the roof. But then the course, I thought, was underwhelming, because it just was kind of a single track that figure-eighted you through the Aspens until you hit that mile mark, and then they brought you through the finish line. And I was like, there's no sense of destination. There's no sense of accomplishment. It was purely a mileage thing. How, you know, like, it missed the mark, you know? So I was like, and I'll tell you too, it was the Joe Grays and all the real fast guys were the Sage candidates. They were in that race. So I quickly realized I was not fast
going to get
at
second
all.
place.
I was like, oh, okay. Well, still, I want to create a race series, you know? I probably won't compete, but that's just it. It lets bros like me, the Cirque Series, do the race and have fun. It lets beginner types do it. And that was always the idea from the beginning, was all inclusive. Like, I want all ages there, all abilities, and the pros. You know, I want it to be this cool sense of accomplishment. Everyone hikes that peak that we can all see together. Yeah. You know, you might finish in an hour before me.
It's not a defined distance. It's like the sense of destination.
To the top. Like, and people can relate to that. And it's that shared sense of accomplishment. It's just so fun. And then the skiing background, you know, it's the finish line atmosphere. I want it to be super fun, because when you're done with a mountain adventure, you want to celebrate.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go next. You know, like in skiing, there's après culture is so important, right? And we've just been talking about the advantage that you had in not being core endemic to trail, which makes me want to ask, like, what about ski culture and the part of that community that you were connected with at the time, whether it was competitions or just day-to-day enjoyment of skiing, bled into Cirque Series? Because, I mean, at least from what I gather on the internet, it does feel like there is a connection between those two worlds, at least just in the experience itself and the vibe.
Yeah, I mean, skiing, to most extreme skiers, the place you seek is the high alpine, where it's real spicy. And that's where you find your most memorable moments. That's where you find the most challenging terrain. So at the Cirque Series, we go up into those same places. And obviously, when you don't have to worry about avalanches, it's still an inherently dangerous place to be, but it's still so beautiful, so powerful. And so that element of it is absolutely like part of it, because I love being up there in the winter. So I'm like, man, these same places, these high alpine magical places in the summer are still like very powerful to be in. And so, not only to run through them, but literally like get to the top, like of the coolest peak around. And it's like a primal thing too. It's just like you feel so reduced to like emotions when you're just pushing yourself to the limit, get to the high point, get to the bottom, and then skiing like absolutely operates a critical part of the day. So I was like, man, we need to have cool brands there. Shout out to On, and they've been a great title sponsor. And it's like all the other brands that are there, all the people that are there. It's just like this cool environment for people to meet, like young professionals. It's not, just runner types. It's kind of all spectrum of people. And it's cool because I've seen people meet and get married. It's crazy. It's so cool.
The race is short enough to where you actually can hang out for a couple hours, not feeling totally terrible or needing to be in the med tent. You can,
exactly.
Got a good workout in. Now let's hang out with some friends.
Yeah. Well, I say that part of it too is that for the beginner types to be like in the start gate next to guys like Kipngeno and Adrian and stuff, and it's exciting because they can fan out, when it's like grandson, dad, and grandpa in the start gate next to you guys, and somehow it makes sense for everybody. It's a pretty cool environment. Yeah.
Rad. One thing I wanted to ask you about, sort of an esoteric RD question, but the way that you have the series structured, where you're really sort of focused on what are otherwise winter sport destinations. Like I grew up learning how to ski at A-Basin, when I was a kid too. And, you've Alta, Snowbird, Targhee, et cetera. Alyeska, I think, is also a ski resort. And it seems like, there's sort of an alignment of incentives there in you bringing business to those locations in the summer months where maybe it's a little bit quieter. So I guess my question is just like developing those partnerships with the resort destinations and how that's been supportive of the series as a whole and the success you've had.
Yeah, it's cool because I've had experience skiing at all the resorts that we have races at. So I kind of already had a pretty good idea of how the ridges kind of connected, and what the base area facilities kind of look like. And really though, there's cool mountains, there's infrastructure. So there's parking, there's bathrooms, there's access roads. So the safety protocol is, efficient. And we partner with the host ski patrol because obviously we're going up into dangerous places. I want to make sure we have like a really efficient safety plan and partner with that resort's seasoned ski patrol because they know exactly how to get around those mountains very well. So that's also a big plus of it.
That's probably something that also bleeds over from your experience as a big mountain skier, because for most trail runners and maybe even a lot of event directors, the safety plan isn't the first thing you think about. But, obviously in skiing, it's like the number one priority or the biggest box you have to check before you go out.
Yeah. I mean, over the 9 years, we've had like 25,000 runners and only 2 serious injuries. So it's a pretty tiny percentage of people getting hurt, but we are over prepared at each race for the safety plan because like when you go skiing, getting hurt is kind of like top of mind because it's so dangerous, but we're in the same places. So that's absolutely critical, like that we have that in place. But, I think the resorts are stoked that we're there because it is the summer and, most resorts are looking for summer business. So suddenly, good 1,000 people are there between the runners, the brands, the media, and kind of spectators and public. So they're happy. And then the PR imprint from everyone sharing afterwards. And we purposely place, 5 or 6 photographers at each race up on the mountain to take really cool photos of all the runners. And then we email those to all the runners the day after the race so they can share them. And that's how I thought of with skiing is like, hey, we go up and we go with photographers and try to take the coolest images possible. I'm like, let's take the coolest images possible from good photographers of these people running, and they can have this cool image whether they just throw it on Insta or they save it and frame it for 50 years. You know, you never know.
It's so interesting. So now we have the après vibe, the safety protocols, and the content capture, all things that are somewhat adopted from your experience as a professional skier. And you feel that, right? Like as an observer, it makes sense.
Yeah. And to a certain extent, I always just think of Cirque Series as a mountain adventure. But the more, you know, that we get into all these seasons going by and I get to know the community at each mountain, I get to know the personalities that come out and race. Like, you know, we are a running race series. So it's kind of fun to be a part of that ecosystem and kind of be a stepping stone into people that didn't realize they were competent enough to do, you know, a longer race.
Yeah.
Like we've had a lot of people that are like, the first peak I've ever been on was one of your races, and now we're doing an ultra. So it's like very cool
That's what we
to be a
talked
part
about
of
on the
that.
show.
Yeah.
Is like the perfect gateway drug to
Yeah.
get more people into the sport. Another sort of race director question: series is 6 races spread over like 10 weeks. What's that like? Like maybe give a shout out to the operational
Yeah.
team and the logistics of
Oh yeah.
like actually pulling 6 events off in a short period of time.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we're going up into where people are skiing all winter. So our season is limited. And, you know, having 6 races from basically late June and into September, we're producing a race every other weekend. So, you know, the staff is incredible. There's 9 of us that cruise around each race and produce. And, you know, we're not producing a race every weekend. So I feel like the staff, they all feel like they have a summer still. So it's a lot though, like managing all the moving parts. Cause you know, it's one thing to have a race that you put on each year, which takes tons of energy, but when you're having to relocate and move around, it's a lot, but I enjoy it. And when I see everybody enjoying themselves, when I see genuine happiness in the finish line and just people beaming these, you know, genuine smiles, I'm just like, man, that's all the motivation I need to keep putting in the energy to have a great production.
Yeah. All right. So before we talk about tomorrow's race, this year was sort of a big deal where a Cirque race had the USATF Mountain Running Championship. It was live streamed for the first time too, at least to my knowledge. Talk about that. Did that feel like a big inflection point in the history of the 9-year history of the Cirque Series?
Yeah. I mean, having the USATF, you know, being able to host that championship brings me back to my vision 12 years ago. It's like, I feel like the Cirque Series is at the original vision. And, you know, obviously hosting a national championship is like the cherry on top, you know, but it's a nice affirmation that people are valuing what we're putting together. And then seeing the level of competition each year gets better and better. And to see everyone that came out for that race and to, you know, just be a part of the, you know, kind of background hoops we had to jump through with the USATF. It's just special to be a part of an industry, because coming from a ski background, it's still like part of the outdoor industry, but to get to know so many cool people in the running industry, the outdoor industry, and the summer side of things, just lots of talented, amazing people from organizations like USATF and you guys, and then all the characters you meet that run all the mountains that we have to work with to pull off the races. So yeah, I feel super honored, super grateful, and just so impressed with all the fast runners that come out, because it's superhuman, man. You guys are so insanely fast. I can't even compute it. Like, I'm not super slow, but man, I'm like I'm
going for that
up there, and you guys are up on the peak.
I heard you have a middle of the pack award.
Yeah.
I'm going for that.
No,
tomorrow.
you're okay.
middle.
We'll see. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the course that runners are going to be confronting tomorrow, myself included. Tony's got a graphic he's going to pull up here. It's just a screen cap from Strava. So while the audience looks at it, maybe you could just give a quick summary of the A-Basin course specifically.
Yeah, A-Basin's a cool course. You know, we're high elevation Colorado, so we go up to 12,752.
Start at 10.7.
Yeah, so we're up there. It's a cool course, and really most of our courses are kind of a direct path to the summit, and A-Basin's a little different, that they have recently built some just incredible mountain bike trails, and they're downhill mountain bike trails, and they've given us permission to use them for part of our uphill. So this one's a bit more cruisy, a bit more runny than any of our other courses. And in that regard, we cover a lot of terrain. Like we go way out on Zuma Cornice, and you get this amazing view of the whole like eastern valley of the corridor of Summit County. And then you swing back around and you climb up to Little Lenawee. And Little Lenawee Peak is like a really cool extreme Colorado peak. And then you bomb down through some really cool technical, like beautiful canopied forest single tracks. So you still get a really cool high alpine summit, and you know, you kind of get a cruise a little bit more than you do at most Cirque Series. So yeah, A-Basin race is awesome.
So cool. I'm really looking forward to it. I ran the whole course today with Adrian.
Awesome. You guys have fun?
So yeah, we had a great time. Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, looking forward to experiencing it again tomorrow.
Yeah.
So typically on our trailgating shows, we like talk about the field. So maybe we'll just chat about that briefly. And I have a specific question I want to tee you up on as it relates to these athletes. But in the men's race, I mean, we just had Patrick Kipngeno and Philemon Kiriago. This has got to be the first time we've had Kenyan athletes coming over.
They did our Brighton race this year,
right? Yeah, okay.
And they got first and third.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
David
great.
Norris got second. He got right in the mix.
There you go,
Yeah,
Norris. All
amazing.
Right. Great.
But it's good to have him back,
Yeah.
for sure.
So, okay, yeah, incredible. And
Yeah.
They obviously make any race more interesting when they're involved. But also Joe Gray, one of the best mountain runners in North American history, will be here. Mika Boudon-Rousseau's signed up. Cam Smith, who's an absolute savage. Brian Whitfield on the women's side. Anna Mae Flynn. Ali Ostrander, Janelle Lynx, Kayla Ricks, Emma Soland, Tiffany Swartz, among many others. I don't know if you have any insight into some of the under-the-radar talent that'll be here this weekend, but also generally just like speaking about the talent density of the professional field this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I recognize everyone you said, and I'm always just surprised because there's always somebody that shows up that gets in the mix, and maybe gets on the podium where I'm like, where'd they come from? So tomorrow's going to be pretty exciting. It's going to be real competitive. So I'm pretty excited to see how it shakes out. And, you know, Janelle Lynx's podium just about every race or won most races she's entered. Yeah, but I know she's been out with a foot injury. And so this will be her first race back. So I'll be curious to see how she does coming off an injury. But yeah, I mean, having Patrick and Philemon and Joe and all the rest of the boys battling it out and seeing what Ali and
Adrian is
it's gonna be insane. I'm pretty excited, and the weather's gonna be awesome. So yeah, like high 50s, low 60s, just sunny, perfect.
It was perfect up on the peak today. So the other question I wanted to ask you about, this is something I personally think about a lot, is like making your event attractive to the Adrians, Patricks, Philemons, etc. Because I think in today's day and age, brands especially are like, you know, go do Western States or go do one of the UTMB races, both of which take a lot of time and energy to, like, you know, go do a golden ticket or get your qualification done. But I feel like Cirque has done a great job of welcoming the pros and giving them a platform to build their careers. So, of course, you have a lot of experience being a professional athlete yourself. So I figured it might be interesting to just hear you talk about how you think about the pro athletes, what value they bring, what you do to try and make them feel welcome at Cirque events.
Yeah, I mean, having the professional runners out is huge, because I'm always curious to see how fast they can do it. And just because I had a personal interest of like fitness and strength, it's crazy. But you know, from the perspective of what the brands expect of them, it is kind of cool that kind of sub ultra is emerging as, you know, being valid, I guess you could say. But I get it. Like, it's just a short course, but I think that's why it's so fun for the professionals, is that they can hammer out a Cirque Series in an hour and they don't need to really recover from it. And then they're around 500 people that are fanning out on them. Yeah. So I think it's just a different environment, because I feel like a lot of professionals are around their peers at most other events. So suddenly they're in an environment where they're around, you know, just kind of a different dynamic for them. And we try to have good prize money. It's always been, you know, $1,000 for the male and female winner, always been equal prize money. Then have an overall series points leader. But I get it. Like, it's a busy schedule to do, more than 2 or 3 Cirque Series in a year. You do have to drop like some of the other things, or, you have to train, like you said, to go do some of these big marquee events that have been around for quite some time. So it's just fun to be, like I said, a part of that ecosystem, because there's a lot of heritage, and just to even be a part of that in any kind of way that some of these amazing names, amazing athletes have been coming out for our races, is really special. And, some of these guys that are doing real well now, like their first mountain run coming out of like a college track career, like I know like Grayson Murphy, her first trail race ever was a Cirque Series. And same thing with Sophia Lockley, and on and on.
No way.
Yeah, her first
Just
trail race
just
was
a bunch of world
Alyeska.
champions you're grooming
so
here.
it's just fun that whenever they do come back and do a Cirque, because they go on and crush all the races, the big ones, and they come back, and it's always so fun just to give them a big high five, make them feel super welcome, and just celebrate mountain running. Like that's what it boils down to. We want to celebrate cool, beautiful, like places on the planet, and let people flourish and feel seen, whether they come in middle or last, or it's a Sophia or Grayson or Adrian or whatever.
That's so cool. Yeah. What a phenomenon. And we were talking to Adrian too about just like for the pro athletes, they can use the Cirque events as a replacement for a workout while still getting, the development of racing skills, still potentially have a payday, still get a little bit of a boost from, the fans that are in attendance, or, some love from their brand partners with a good performance. So
yeah, I'll mention real quick, at Alta, I think it was, a couple years ago, Joe Gray won, and he was going to some race in Switzerland the next weekend. And so he did one more lap before the awards, and he actually lapped like a good 50 people. So yeah, exactly. Just a quick little training lap, make some money, high five some people. Exactly.
Came back down to accept his $1,000 check.
And he made it in time for the awards.
What
it was
a
amazing.
champion.
Yeah.
All right, a couple more things before I let you go. You famously run all your own races. That's been a tradition, I think, for like every single Cirque Series race. Talk about that.
I'm still my first customer. But I mean, I push myself to the limit where I know I'm seeking that kind of balance, that challenge, getting present and giving everything you got. And at the same time, I'm auditing. I'm inspecting the course flagging to make sure it's where we put it. I'm making sure the aid station volunteers are doing a great job. Sometimes I stop and help them out. In some really technical kind of dangerous spots on the course, we make like a map that locates all of our EMTs, but sometimes they're not quite in the right spot. And so I'll like walk them down to like, hey, this is where we need you. And just stuff like that. So, I mean, it's a working lap. But I have my staff radio in one hand, my safety radio in the other hand. And, I'm texting our little group thread with the staff too. So, I mean, I'm constantly like actively directing the whole time. So it is kind of funny. And I'm taking videos and posting them on our social media. So, I mean, but I enjoy it. It's so fun to feel at capacity, mentally, physically. It's just a great feeling to use all your faculties like that, It's awesome.
And just, I guess, enable all the recreation that's taking place on the course. So cool.
Yeah.
All right, so this is the final race of the 2024 season. So maybe in closing, as you prepare to engage a relaxation of your nervous system and go into off season, anything you want to tease for 2025 or things you're excited about with Cirque Series in the future?
Yeah. We've kind of been at 7 races for 5 or 6 years. And we really have our eye on I'll just say, I don't know what's going to stick, but we're looking actively in the Northwest, like in the Seattle area and out east, and even like the LA area, all those cool big mountains right out of LA. So I think we'll add a race or two in the next year.
What about Mount Tam, dude? Come to the Bay Area.
That's cool too.
Let's go.
I'll come check it out. Game on.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, just it does feel to me like the model has the opportunity to scale, both
Yeah.
domestically and potentially internationally. I know you guys tried out Europe. But yeah, maybe some more coastal stuff so you can expand the season more into the spring or more into the
Exactly.
fall. So it's not
Yeah.
only concentrated in the summer. So your team has a little bit more.
Yeah. Because we were
Room to play.
thinking if we go out east, we can kind of get into the earlier June and even later into October and stuff.
But if you go to LA, you can do it in February or March.
Yeah, so it would be nice to spread things out and still go to cool, population centers are important because when you combine all of our races, we're like 3,500 runners a year, which puts us pretty high up there as far as total runners for like a mountain running event.
700 tomorrow registered, more than 700.
Yeah. So we'll end up with probably around 650 tomorrow. So yeah, it's cool to want to scale, and it's just really interesting that mountain running is growing. Like I feel like the demand is there, and I think for whatever reason, like the story of let's go hike that peak as fast as we can and come back down, it's working. So, it's interesting. It's kind of like, man, do we add more races? Like we already have a great thing going with the 6 or 7, but I think based on selling out our races now for a few years, it's like let's definitely add a few more as long as we're close to a population center, because I think it'd be tough like to go off in the middle of nowhere and try to pull something off. So, but yeah, we're excited.
Nothing in the mix in Alma or Fairplay right now.
I definitely have a backyard loop we could do. Yeah.
Julian, it's great to sit down and chat again in person this
Yeah.
time. I can't wait to pin a bib on at one of your events.
Yeah,
for
man.
The first
Can't
time
wait to
tomorrow.
have you out. I know you guys just came from UTMB. Thanks so much for making the time. Can't wait for you to try it all out tomorrow.
Yeah, this is the UTMB of the mountain I grew up skiing when I was like 6 years
cool.
old. So
Love it.
That'll
Love
be
it.
good memories.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming in studio.
Yeah.